This is my first control board. It was cheap and just for learning. I had read an article describing how to make a power supply out of a computer power supply. The most I learned by building this is how many times I could blow house breakers. And as you can see, I also blew out the controller too. So I had to break down and buy a piece at a time for a proper control system. Learning to wire it was not so bad. This 2 foot by 2 foot CNC machine build was just for me to see if I can make something move. It was never intended for production. I used all thread rods and long nuts for movements. The rods were professionally attached to the motors with a piece of rubber hose and hose clamps. Drawer slides were used for the movements. I used a Sharpie to test my first movements. And by the way, a Sharpie can be crushed. I just taped down a sheet of paper and I was pretty excited on how accurate the drawings were. The only thing I did wrong was telling the software that it was using a 1/4 inch bit. I finally got the nerve to mount my router. The first thing I learned is that MDF wood makes a lot of dust. 3 minutes of cutting and 3 days of cleaning. So I had to build a high-tech cardboard dust shoe with duct tape. This is my first usable part made with this machine. It is a nut holder for the machine and it came out very good. I was cutting at a blazing speed of 12 inches a minute. I started out with adding a utility drawer to keep my most used tools in. Wound up being very useful. That is a 2 foot by 2 foot by 3/4 inch HDPE that I use for the vacuum hold down actually works pretty good too. The wire I use for over 2 years is Cat5 network cable, but after time the wires began to fail from the machine constantly moving, so this is what forced me to make some updates. I only had one motor to move the gantry and the y-axis. It worked, but I constantly had to tighten all the collets and gears on both ends. My housekeeping skills for all my wires were never well done. My dust collection system is one of the most proud updates as of yet. It looks rough, but as soon as I turn it on, the shop vac on, everything seals itself and I get a very little to no dust into the shop vac at all. I put the system on wheels so that I can move it around when needed. I plug the router and shop vac into a power strip so I can turn both on at the same time. I use the switches for homing the machine. I like to mark my rails on both sides of my Y and X axis so that I can check to see if my machine is still square and accurate. I seem to keep my tabletop a mess all the time. I don't use the back section very often. I hope someday to make this into a 4x4. This old computer in my first homemade control box is, well, to say least, is the poor condition, not to mention the ridiculous mess of wires. I plug my computer and monitor into the side of this surge protector and the stepper and controllers into the other side. Now I began taking apart my control box and computer so that I can put all of it into one box. I am so surprised that this box hasn't shorted everything out the way I've got everything running here. I'm not an electrician nor a carpenter, and it's starting to show really bad here. More ashamed of this thing than I am proud of it, but it actually worked for 2 years. I plan on adding a fourth motor, which will be slaved to the Y axis to eliminate having that single motor trying to move that entire gantry back and forth. I hope it works out. My carpenter skills and knowledge is very poor. I knew what I wanted and could picture what I wanted for this to do, but don't have the skills to build it yet. Still working on the wire housing keeping. I built a 3D printer long before I started building this machine, and as you can see, I like using it to make parts for this machine also. I use it quite a bit, probably more than I should. I depend on it a lot, but I actually like the accuracy I can create with using this 3D printer. This latch idea is really good. My old latch has been used for over a year with no problems at all. Now this one is even stronger than before. The front of my box, well, the whole box looks pretty crappy, but it's doing what I want it to do. The idea was to be able to get to the computer or the controllers if I ever needed to. The top of the box is on hinges so that I can get from the top if necessary. I'm excited to try out the Xbox controller that I added also. I tried to make a cable chain with my 3D printer, hope it works out. Now my Y-axis motors are lower and closer to the other sprockets, giving it better support. Still got a lot of housekeeping to do. The cable chain is too long, but that is no problem. I can shorten it. The cooling fans have a lot of air through the entire box. The two back fans suck in air and the two front fans blow it out. I did forget to make a plug for my Z probe. I will have to add that in the next project. It may not look professional, but it works great. I can get to all the computer components and the controllers very easily now. After watching Vince on Corvette Guy 50 channel, I realized that making my box out of wood was not a good idea. Could possibly be a fire hazard. So now I'm going to redo this thing using metal sheets. Hopefully I can bend them and manipulate them the way I want. This is a build for my new Z-axis. Just a few tools that I used. The reason it is so long is I plan on adding a rotary axis also. I have been using this method for a very long time and it works great, but I never liked it because it seems so inconvenient. I put these bolts in to make sure it always square. Then I can take them out of the way. I added a lip on one edge to hold down the material in case it is not flat. But this only works on material that is 3/4 of an inch thick. This is an update idea that I came up with. This plunger I found at Home Depot for 2 1/4. They have a magnet on the end and come with a small plate that I attach to one end of a 1/2 inch dowel. This is so the dust collector will not suck out the dowel when going over it. I use the machine to align all the pegs. Now I don't have to make any setups. I just press the dowel and it pops up. I have 1.5 inches total from underneath to the top of the table, and that is plenty of contact space to keep the dowel from moving or wiggling. Now I can put clamps all around to hold down the material, and when I surface the spool board, it will also smooth the top of the peg. I used a V-bit to scribe a line from the front to the rear of the table. This is the parts for the tailstock. There is a mark in the center of both ends of each part so that I can line them up with the scribe that I have from one end of the machine to the other. This is the parts for the drive-in. My control box has a 5th axis plug just for this. This is where I need to create something portable to roll sheet wood to the machine or to the back room and have it able to lift the wood up so I can load it or slide it onto the machine or workbench. I am also trying to think of a faster clamping setup that will still use my T-track, but I want to slide the clamps in position and just press down, not screw them down, to hold the material and still not be in the way of the router. Someday I hope to create a removable vacuum hold down system. Alright, I'm going to try to start cutting some more drawers out for the toolbox. Go ahead and let the machine home. Take off the dust shoe for now. I will load up the program that I've got ready. preset setting I have for 90% of my jobs. Run the program now.
Please remove dust shoe, and please put in bit number 5.25, downcut, and mill.
I've already got that bit in the machine, so let's click OK. Now we'll come down here and calibrate the bit size. All my jobs are measured from the tabletop, not the top of the material.
Please put on dust shoe. Now I'm ready to continue this project.
As soon as I hear the spindle turn on, I'll turn on the dust collection. Doing all the slot first. Then we'll start doing all the profile stuff. While that's running, I'll give you a little tour of my work area here. This dust collection system works very well. I've got a Harbor Freight modified system, 2 horsepower. All the micro dust goes out the window. The only damage I've actually done to my house during this whole process is the 2 holes up there. That's it. All this stuff here will be gone once I get this toolbox finished. If I ever get it finished. And here is my creation room or thinking room, whatever you want to call it. Computer room. That's my 3D printer enclosed inside there. I keep this for my full sheets of plywood, and I'm starting to create a junk drawer out of the rest of it. This back room is where I actually do cuts on sheets of plywood and things. That way I can control it. I can close the door, put a fan in the window, and of course I wear my little mask. This is a pathetic excuse of a mobile dust collector. I try to make it simple, but I never satisfied with simple. I don't get the vacuum power I should get out of it. These little carts here I created so that I can have multiple tools. everything is on wheels, so I can maneuver around. Once I get, if I start cutting full sheets of lumber, then I have to take all this stuff out of here except for the dust collection to make room for it to work. My problem is I can't physically carry plywood. I really am trying to design something that I can maneuver lumber around. This is all the sheets that have been cut. And that's going to be the tops and sides of all the, all the tops and sides for the toolbox. May not be the best looking setup, but it's very effective. There's my touch plate that you've seen it used a while ago. A lot of 3D printed stuff because there's no such thing as the parts that I've got. All of this is 3D printed. Very sturdy. The reason I have such a tall Z-axis is because I've got a homemade rotary axis which I can adapt to the T-track so that I can do rotary work. And I have a lot of projects that I'm wanting to create. These are already some side drawers that I've already cut out. They're ready to be glued and nailed together. But my biggest concern right now is to figure out some kind of cart that I can put my half sheet lumber and be able to have it lift up and load it on the table. I can't figure out what I can build that will be portable enough for me to carry out. On the front of this toolbox, it's going to have a 2x4 on a hinge hanging from the top, coming all the way to the bottom, and that way I can put a sheet on that 2x4 and then pick it up and slide it onto the workbench. At least that's the game plan. Well, not much of a tour, but I hope that gives enough information to see what I need to be done. This is a quick video from SketchUp for the design of the toolbox. Drawing is much easier than doing. I had to take the toolbox apart because all my calculations were wrong and it was too wide to fit through the doorways. This is all the 2x4s I'm going to use. This is my idea of a release mechanism for the extension of the toolbox. I was unable to drill holes on these brackets, so I had to work around that. These brackets are rated for 200 pounds. Here's a short update of my toolbox so far. I've got the box built, got a few things off of the shelf, Still got a lot to do here. Don't have all the drawers filled up yet. I got plenty of room for other stuff. Got my tools, most of my tools right here. And I can slide this over. Got room for other things down here. Got my clamps. Again, I got more room down here for other things I need to sort out. And I've got a lot of empty drawers left, which is good. But I can grab this thing and drag it out here. I just need a temporary workbench. I can turn this around. Grab here. Now I've got more workspace to work on up here. Got my little clip set up here where I can just pull it and drop it back down. It's out of the way. And it fits. I can take it to the back room, put it in there if I need to use it for a cutting station or something. Yeah, that's it so far. And by the way, the locks on these wheels work great. I've never had to lock more than 2 at a time. Well, that's it for today.